on previous occasions. This is Jane Miller.
Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hi, Bill. This is Melissa Kolbitsky. You know me from the county, from Judge Klein's chambers.
Oh, yeah. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Great.
And again, my name's John Newlay with WellSpan Philhaven. I don't believe we've met before, but it's very nice to make your acquaintance.
Well, thank you. Likewise.
All right, so as I was saying, Bill, I don't know if you heard this part, we'll start with allowing Melissa to share a little bit. She was through one of the trainings and, has some personal points to share concerning the training, and so we'll start with allowing her to share.
Okay. Thank you, first of all, for letting us be here. We are all going to be talking about something that's near and dear to our hearts, and that's the mental health first aid course that Philhaven trains. Or teaches. It's taught worldwide and here in the United States, and we believe that the value that it could bring to the Lebanon County employees would be wonderful. Its purpose is to educate, create awareness, and bring understanding for those living and struggling with mental health issues. Now, you've met both of these fine people, and they're the ones that teach the course. They're the expert, I'm not. But like Jane said, I did go through the course, and I'd like to explain a little bit of my background as to why I'm here. You all know me as a county employee, but that's not just the reason that brings me here. Before I was employed by the county, I worked out at Philhaven. I worked out there for about 7 years, and I left due to family responsibilities. I wanted to spend more time with my daughter before she went to school. And when I started employment here, I started here. And I started down in the clerk of court's office, and I was surprised and saddened to see how many names came across my desk that I recognized from Philhaven. A lot of my duties down there were preparing the court boxes for criminal miscellaneous, which meant pulling the files together and pulling the DA charges. And that awareness made me look further, and I would see often on the news how many times mentally ill people weren't being given the help that they needed, or worst case scenario, they weren't listened to, or they were shot, and then it would only come after the fact that they actually had issues that had been disregarded. And it always made me wonder if things were handled differently, what the outcome would have been. Statistics show that 1 in 4 Americans suffer from some sort of mental health illness, which means that it could be any of us, anyone we know, anyone we work with, family, friends, neighbors, and coworkers. And oftentimes, those symptoms are hid, or we don't recognize them, and that person doesn't get the help that they need, but the effects are very real. In my awareness and watching these things, little did I know that that battle would be brought to my family in a very personal way. I guess I can't revisit that dark spot without getting upset. But 2 years ago, a family member of mine struggled with mental health issues, and in the process of getting them help, the system left us down in a really terrible way. The symptoms were misdiagnosed or misinterpreted, and my family was thrown headlong into a horrific experience that I would never wish on anyone. Fortunately, today, that family member is doing better, and they were able to get the help that they needed. But being handed a battle that I never wanted, and in the course of that battle, when I saw how badly the system was broken at times, and how incredibly hard as a caretaker it was to find my way through it, even with my overview of having worked at Philhaven and then working here, it made me really wonder how someone who doesn't have the mental capacity could ever find their way through a system like this. And it made me wonder how many of them end up in a place that they shouldn't be because they don't get the help they need for whatever reason that is. And I am not blaming nurses or doctors or law enforcement, because I often think they go into battle without having the time or the resources really to understand and see and know what they're seeing, because they have to make quick decisions. And so I made a vow to myself that I was going to learn as much as I could, and be a voice for those that didn't often have a voice, or when they spoke they were misunderstood. And so I educated myself, and I read articles about all sorts of mental health issues, facilities, trends, police reports, local and national. And the more I looked, the more I saw how those in the medical field and in law enforcement do the best they can, but the system doesn't always work. And I came to the conclusion that we have to do better. But the question always was, how? So in my process to continue to educate myself, I came across an article that was in the Patriot News back in October 8th of 2015, and it was entitled Michael's Story. And it followed the life story of a mentally ill man whose family pretty much made it all about their life to get him the help he needed. And as the story chronicles his journey, it often goes back to the fact of how he was deserted by the Pennsylvania health care system. And it highlights how many parts of it are broken. And unfortunately, the man ended up attacking someone in his family and ended up in prison. That hurt. That hurt, I thought. And so I found the article heart-wrenching not only due to this man's experience in his family, but sadly because his experience is becoming all too common, locally in Pennsylvania, in the U.S., and worldwide. And I struggled with the knowledge that while that help is out there, so many people like Michael and like my family member, they got lost in the shuffle. And why was that? Fortunately, in my research, one of the bright lights at the end of that dark tunnel is that others have also been wondering the same thing. And out of that concern and wonder and quest to be part of the solution and not the problem, sprang the creation of the mental health first aid training course. It started in Australia and has been in the United States for over 10 years now. You have no idea how relieved I was when I came across that article about this international movement and then was able to trace it back to being taught in our backyard at Philhaven. When I saw the course, I immediately signed up for it, and I'm glad to say that I became certified in the mental health first aid in November of 2016. There were many reasons I wanted to take this course, but it really came down to me wanting to be a place of comfort for those who were in distress, being able to see and recognize the signs that so often a hurting person is unable to articulate. They're not sure what their emotions or their feelings are, and I wanted to be that bridge of comfort and hope for them. And I often ask myself, can you imagine being in so much pain in your mind and your heart, but that pain isn't something that can be captured on an X-ray or an MRI, and because there's no visual confirmation, your attempts to get help are often brushed off or misinterpreted. We wouldn't treat someone like that who has a broken leg or cancer that way, but often people with mental health issues are treated that way. And I didn't ever want to be someone that brushed off someone else who needed help. So I went back and I ran some numbers with, the Mental Health National Council has a statistic of 1 in 4 persons struggling with mental health issues. And I know that that's an approximate number, but the amounts could impact us and they're worthy of recognition. I found out the county employs 668 persons, 301 of which work in the courthouse. That means every single day, an average of 75 employees could be struggling with some sort of issue that they bring to work. And that would be somebody that we're quite possibly sitting beside, working with, or interacting with. Also, on most Wednesdays, we have criminal miscellaneous on the 3rd floor. And I pulled the court list today. We have 3 courtrooms running. And the number of the combined public expected here today was about 250 people. And that's a low number because usually we have 4 courtrooms running. So you figure, with the 75 possible employees that could be struggling with whatever issue they have, we then could have another 65 persons on the 3rd floor that are struggling, and maybe even more, because they're in a setting that often helps to escalate their mental health illnesses due to the fear, the uncertainty, the guilt, or whatever. So when you combine those numbers, that's very significant to have all that at one place. And that just always really made me wonder how we can make the system better. And so when I found this and I went through the course, even with my unique training and oversight of being at Philhaven and then coming here, I found the course really eye-opening, and it really helped me learn things that I had never knew before. And I believe that if the county implemented the mental health training countywide, the benefits would be numerous. I think the training would help to cultivate an environment of respect and understanding, compassion and kindness, and I think those additional skills would help to improve interactions between staff and interactions between staff and the public. I don't mean to suggest that our employees are anything less than professional, because I have been here several years and I love just about everybody here. I'm proud to be a county employee. But if we could make the system better, why wouldn't we? And I believe that the mental health first aid training would. As an added incentive, Philhaven actually underwrites the entire cost of the training. I believe the training is valued at $170 a person. Mm-hmm. So again, I ran numbers. If every person just in the courthouse would get trained, that comes out to over $50,000 that would be reinvested back into the community by way of better skills to work with the public. And if every county employee would be trained, it would be over $113,000 that was invested back into the community. I also sincerely believe that if Lebanon County were to commit to mandatory training of its employees, it would set up our county as a beacon of light and hope to be looked at and followed by other counties on what is often a dark and treacherous terrain for so many. And I think it would send a signal that our county and we that are employed here are dedicated to giving the very best of our services and help to all the citizens, including those that often receive the least of it. So with that, I'm going to pass it to these fine people.
Wow, I don't think I could have said that any better. You obviously did your homework, and thank you for that heartfelt, that actually, it makes me feel good because it makes me know that, A, we did our job right. And it's always good to get kudos, but B, to know that you know, just the impact that this could have within the courthouse, which you had all those numbers to run and we didn't. So by just hearing that and the impact that could have on Lebanon County is pretty significant.
It really is. And I think John and I can attest to the fact that, you know, both of us have worked crisis intervention for many years. And we've seen our community members, both professional and non-professional, in the rooms at the Good Samaritan Hospital, WellSpan Good Samaritan now. And, you know, depression, anxiety, some of the diagnoses that we talk about in the mental health first aid training, they don't discriminate. So any one of us can experience the onset of a mental health diagnosis at any time in our lives. So this really is a training that not only would benefit our community members, but it would benefit your employees. We lose a lot of productivity every year to people who are struggling. So this is a training that will actually booster productivity across the board. So
one of the goals, I mean, of this training is to, you know, a lot of times, and what Jane and I both recognize from working years and years at crisis, and we both also worked over at the admissions department at Philhaven, is you get to see kind of what drives people, and when they finally get to the very bottom, what's going on in their lives and what symptoms that they're having, and the duration and the severity of those symptoms. What this course does is it allows people to recognize when somebody is starting to go downhill. They're not all the way at the bottom of the hill, but they're starting to go downhill. And if you start to notice those symptoms, which is one of the things the course teases out, then we're then able to say, hey, wait a minute, something's not right here. You know, I'm noticing a change here with Sue, or I'm noticing a change here, and to address those changes early, because bringing somebody back up when they're just starting to go over the hill is much easier than when they get all the way down to the very bottom, and we're seeing them in crisis. If we're doing an admission over at Philhaven, it takes much longer, and for a county employee that maybe reaches that bottom point, it's going to be a struggle to get back up to a productive working member. They might have to take time off, they might have to take FMLA, or they might have to do something, but they're going to probably need some time off to get back. And so if we recognize those symptoms early, now we can get those people the help that they need, most likely on an outpatient setting, and get them back up to where they need to be so that they can be productive members of this community and of this county. So that's one of the things. Now, Philhaven, we do this. We don't charge for this. Most other places do, and one of the reasons we don't is because Philhaven sees value in having a healthy community. If the healthier, the more people are trained in this and can recognize we're going to have a healthier community, and a healthier community is going to be a more productive community, and that's sort of one of the main reasons that they designated this program as our community give back, you know, to Lebanon County and the counties that we service, which also includes Lancaster, York, Dauphin, and Adams. So York County has actually, we're going to be doing this for York County employees. This mental health first aid, we just set up 2 full 8-hour days to do that, and I think that just happened within the last couple days. So they're also kind of seeing value in this, but this is our home county. So, this is where we reside. I know we're WellSpan Philhaven, so, we're much bigger now, but Philhaven's been a staple of this community for over 50 years. So, we value this community. We all have worked in this community for many years, and we want to see a healthy community because Jane and I both see the other side of that, and it's tough when they get to us in crisis to get them back where they need to be. So I left the clicker over there, but
I'm sorry.
that's okay. And so basically, what is it? Mental health first aid, it's that initial help offered to a person. So they're starting to develop a mental health or substance use problem. So this includes substance use. So we're talking, alcohol, other drugs as well, or they're experiencing a mental health crisis or emotional type crises. The first aid's given until appropriate treatment and support are received or until the crisis resolves itself. So one way to think about this is, have any of you in this room been trained with CPR or first aid? Has anybody? Most people have had that. Have any of you had to actually use that? So Joellen has, Bob, I don't know if you have, and most of the time in the room when we ask this question with a room full of people, we'll get probably half the hands go up for CPR first aid, and then when we ask how many have actually used it, 1 or 2, maybe 3 hands if there's nurses in the room more, But then we'll ask, well, how many of us have come across or known somebody close to us that has gone through a real emotional type crisis, and we ask them to raise their hands. And inevitably, most of the people in the room will raise their hand because they've known somebody, and which just goes to show us how much more common this is than we might think. This is something that in the past has largely gone because of stigma. People don't want to talk about it. And I think the older the generation that you're dealing with, the less people want to talk about it. One of the things that we're trying to do, and that this program, which now has trained over 1 million people in this country, we're trying to get people to talk about this because this is happening, this is common. Does anybody remember back in the 60s or 70s with regards to cancer? Did we talk about cancer back then? A lot of times it was, whoa, she has the big C. You didn't even say the word because of the stigma that surrounded that. Now, if you take cancer, for example, the whole month of October, the entire NFL is wearing pink. So you can see that that's changed. And so that's one of the things that we're trying to do here with regards to mental health, is that to recognize that this is something that we need to start talking about. Because there's a lot of people that are masking this. They're afraid to get help. They feel like they're weak. They feel like they don't want to be labeled. But this is nonetheless is still happening, and people don't ask for this. Nobody asked to come down with severe depression. Nobody asked to come down with bipolar disorder. A lot of times though, those circumstances that go on in our life kind of lead us down this path, and before we know it, we're starting to struggle with common signs and symptoms that are typically pointed out with this course. So with CPR and first aid, our job, if I have cut my arm and I'm bleeding pretty bad, if Bob, CPR or first aid, you're going to come up and get some gauze. Hey, let's get some direct pressure on that. Let's hold it above your head. Let's put pressure on that, and until it looks pretty bad, we might need to get you to the ER to get checked out, maybe some stitches. No different with this. It's all we're doing is we're applying that initial first aid. We're not here to be their counselor. We're not here to fix the problem or cure them. We're here to recognize when something's going wrong and then to get them to the appropriate next level of help. Whether that's professional help, it could be self-help. It just depends on what's going on because each individual is different.
Excuse me, John.
Yeah.
We have about 8 minutes left.
No problem. We can.
So, and I'd like to allow some time for questions. So if we could there's so much good stuff here, but I know the next group's coming in at 2 o'clock, that I need to allow some time for questions. So
Okay.
if there's anything that's that you really have to get across,
Get it across now.
yeah.
Got it. No, I got it.
It's
So-
on, and you have a copy of.
Okay.
You have a
the
copy of
PowerPoint.
everything of the PowerPoint, but basically, the action plan that we use, which is similar, CPR and first aid, you guys remember it was ABC, airway, breathing, circulation, now it's circulation, airway, breathing. What they use is algae, so, assessing for suicide, listening non-judgmentally, giving reassurance and information, and then encouraging appropriate professional help and encouraging self-help and other support strategies. It's not linear. You don't have to start at A and end at E. But this is essentially what we teach people in the course that we want people to understand. And this basically just shows why we do this. We've already mentioned mental health problems are common. The stigma, which is prolific throughout the mental health system, which is getting a little better. Professional help can be a problem, getting the proper treatment. A lot of people don't seek help, and a lot of people don't know how to respond. They don't want to make it worse, so they don't do anything, which is probably worse. It's probably better you do something than do nothing. And this kind of gives you at least some tools of how to do something. This basically just shows where mental health first aid can be helpful, and basically when somebody's becoming unwell or they have become unwell, that little box in the center. And this just kind of shows you who we're reaching. General community at the bottom there is the bulk, but we tailor this and we do this presentation everywhere. We're doing this presentation at Johnson & Johnson for neuroscientists in New Jersey because they've asked us to do this for them. And we've gotten a very good response from them. They're rolling this out within their corporation because of some of the training that Jane and I have done and connections that we've made. This just shows who's being trained where. Pennsylvania's right up there in the top 5 states of people. And this, again, you pointed out the cost, Melissa did, that it's right here, $170 is typically what it costs to train one new first aider. Supplies, manuals. We have a manual that Jane brought along that we can pass around there if we want to show you what the people take home with them that they can use as a resource guide.
And they receive this free of charge as well.
Yep.
As part of the training.
And this just kind of shows you why you should train your employees. Employers face an estimated 80 to 100 billion in indirect costs annually due to mental health and substance use, lost productivity, absenteeism. 10.8 million full-time workers has a substance use disorder. So again, this helps us learn to look for those signs and symptoms. This is just a history, and then this kind of shows you what we offer. 8-hour course. We can do it here. We do it at Philhaven. 10 to 30 participants. We provide lunch when it's held at our Mount Gretna location, but we can come anywhere and do this training as well. So it's group, lecture, experiential exercises, role play, and video and Q&A. That's the general curriculum that we cover. So you can see depression, anxiety, suicidal behavior, anxiety, psychosis, substance use, the most common things that you're typically going to see, we cover that. And it's evidence-based. So this wasn't developed in somebody's garage. This was developed by a lot of people that are in the field over a period of years in Australia. It started in Australia and was brought over here about 10 years ago.
Okay.
So with that, I'll open it
We
up.
have a couple minutes at the end, maybe you can wrap
Yeah,
up.
sure.
I want to allow for questions, so.
Well, yeah, I have a lot of questions. 2 8-hour days, that's a lot of time to take people away from their work, and I don't know if it's mandatory or voluntary.
I'm having trouble hearing the question.
Jamie, repeat the question.
Maybe just speak up on it, I don't know.
I'd like to know if it's 2 8-hour days, that's a lot of time to take people
Yeah.
away from their work. Is it mandatory or voluntary? And what are there any lawsuits because you're trying to practice medicine without a license? Normally you need permission to treat people, and I mean, I just have all these questions. I don't know.
They're great questions, Joellen. It's a 1 8-hour day. It can be broken up into 2 4-hour segments. So it's a nationally recognized certification. So people are in a certified group of people. And just like CPR, it comes under the Good Samaritan law. So there are no legal ramifications for administering the skills that are learned in this training. What question did I miss?
I think
Well, is it mandatory
Oh, is it
or is it
mandatory?
voluntary? I mean,
The
not
training?
everybody wants to do this. And in fact, it's been my experience that people experiencing mental health issues deny and would not participate.
The training is not necessarily just for people who are experiencing mental health concerns. It's for people who care about these people that are experiencing the symptoms so that they can respond in a compassionate way and with some skills, with a set of tools.
So is it mandatory or is it voluntary?
We've done both. We've trained Lancaster County Corrections, the officers, so that was a mandatory training for them. You know, the prison decided to have all their officers trained, and actually they responded well. I think initially they were thinking, great, I have a whole 8 hours that I have to sit here in a mental health training, and they were so receptive and really appreciated the skills that they learned. And in addition to that, we do trainings where it's a voluntary basis. People come because they really want to know. They may have somebody in their life that's struggling and they want to know, you know, what they can do, what's the best, you know, course for them to take.
And from the county's perspective, it might make sense to people that are in a supervisory position, you know, for those people to be able to recognize when one of their people that they're supervising is not doing well. I could see value in that, because that's you're going to lose productivity within the county that way. And if you're able to recognize signs and symptoms somebody's not doing well, and then pull them aside and say, hey, you know, I've noticed some different things. You seem to, you know, your absenteeism's been kind of going up, and I know you've been going through some things in your life. You know, are you okay? What can we do to help you? You know, get back on track again.
Sooner than later.
Sooner than later,
Yeah,
right?
It seems like you're investing in education for your employees. We certainly know that we send a lot of our employees for education over and over again for certifications and CE credits and so on.
Right.
And so why wouldn't we invest in them in this regard for
Right.
so anyway, that's just an editorial comment. Bill, do you have any questions?
I actually, I think my questions were answered. Typically, I might ask, how large is a class?
30.
10 minimum, and then up to 30. We can't do more than 30.
All right. And I want to say thank you to all three of you, and especially Melissa for her candor in sharing her personal story, because that, to me, that was very convincing. So I, like Commissioner Phillips, certainly see value in this, and I think we should weigh the possibilities, and I think at a minimum, you know, department heads or program leaders or whatever, this would be something that the county would want to avail itself of this. So I appreciate the presentation, and although I wasn't there, and I apologize for that, but I did hear it clearly, and I think I got the message. So, and I assume one of the slide folders will be left there for me to review.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, well, thank you.
Yeah.
If we have to sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
We've, this has been held downstairs in the auditorium a couple of times, I think, at the courthouse for law enforcement.
No, we had law enforcement out at Philhaven.
Oh, at Philhaven.
Yeah.
Okay. I know we had enough. Do you know how many of the county's probation, I think, attended?
Some probation, some law, some of the officers, but I don't have that number with me. John Schott.
Yeah.
would have those numbers, and I can
Okay.
clearly get the numbers for you too.
Okay.
But it's been well received by our officers and probation. We actually trained state probation and parole as well.
I thought
So
it was downstairs.
And I would like to just throw this in there. I know not everybody would feel as strongly as I did, but I took a vacation day and went out. And I have no regrets. I went out on a Tuesday, and then that Saturday I went back out and I got training for,
question, persuade, refer.
yeah,
Yeah.
for suicide training.
Prevention.
And, right.
Yep.
And I really felt like, even though I lost a vacation day, it was well worth it. And I think it's a skill that I can take with me for the rest of my life.
Sure, absolutely, yeah. Okay,
Well, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for sharing. This
Thank
is a new concept for me, and I just need to digest things, and I
Sure.
always have questions, so please don't interpret that negatively.
Oh,
Not at all.
no.
Okay.
Not at all,
No.
Commissioner Litz.
But I really need to think about this, and I need to know the logistics of how things would work.
Sure.
And we're all
Understood.
here to answer them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
Joellen, I think my email is on the bottom of the last page.
Yeah, if you have any
so-
questions.
Yeah. Feel free to get in
Email.
touch with me.
yeah, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Leave my word.